this conversation forward, when you actually got the news that you are now going to be the chairman, how did you deal with the emotions or the overwhelming reactions that followed?
So actually, from the time the process started, so at that time the bank was in a slightly peculiar position in the sense that they were looking for an MD, but because of the way the retirements etc. were taking place in the bank, it was very clear that whoever becomes the MD may also become the chairman in the next month or so, right? So because of that process, becoming the MD was a big surprise because that was a stepping stone to the chairman. As I said, it was very high probability that whoever becomes MD at that point of time would also become the chairman. So some of those things, emotionally or otherwise, were taken care of when that happened, right? And then there was another month or so to go before they would announce the chairmanship. So it didn't come at one point of time. It didn't come completely unexpectedly, the chairmanship, right? So in that sense,
In that case, I would like to rephrase my question. Is more about when you became the MD and chairmanship followed thereafter. So what was the reaction then?
So when I became the MD, actually it was a big surprise. So just to take you back a little bit, there were 5 people who were considered for that or who were eligible for that position. And in those 5, I was the junior most, right? So when I was shortlisted for the panel so that I could be interviewed for becoming the MD, I knew, and I use the word knew in the way it means, right? I knew that I will not be the MD. This is a process. It's the senior most who gets it, or maybe unless there is something against him, vigilance or otherwise, in which case the next senior most will get it. That had been the tradition of the bank for the last 200 years, right? So why would it change at this point of time, right? So you knew that you are not going to become the MD, but you knew you are part of the process of selection of MD because if you are eligible, you have to be called and interviewed. So I was, I took it very casually. I was not preparing myself mentally or otherwise in any which way for the MD selection process, which largely consisted of an interview by a panel appointed by the Government of India, and there are quite eminent people in that panel. Then one of my friends in the bank, who was the managing director of the bank at that point of time, he called me one day. I was in Travancore. I was managing director, State Bank of Travancore, right? And this fellow was managing director, State Bank of India, right? So he was both my boss and my friend. So he asked me, what am I doing to prepare for that interview? I said, I'm not doing anything. He said, why?
I'm not in the reckoning.
Because, I told him, what's the point? You're not going to make it. You will not make it for, reasons that we understand. So it is not a disgrace or a discredit. This is the way it works.
Yeah.
So he got a little annoyed with me, and to cut a long story short, he fired me left, right, and center.
One MD firing another.
Yeah. He says, I never expected this from you. Even if you don't make it, at least the panel should think that here is the best person and we can't take him for whatever reason, this, that, and who knows what will happen. And he also used some colorful language to provoke me. Yeah. So I told him that, look, okay, at best it's a small window, right? So why are you telling me all this? So I remember his words. He says it is for you to make that window into a door and walk right into the chairman's cabin. This is my friend telling me very powerful language. I still remember it. And he said this, and that sort of went home to me. I said, yeah, what do I lose? As the MD of the bank, I can manage my time. So if I have to spend 1 hour or even one day, preparing myself for it, which is basically getting information, thinking about topics, reasoning them out, understanding things that you do not know. It could be a variety of things, geopolitical, technology, banking, the usual stuff, right? So it was this guy's provocation that got me to that state of mind where I started preparing for interview. And in the interview, I was the last person to be interviewed, again because I was the junior most. So again, the public sector style of interviewing is that when you interview a person, so first you will say, okay, make him comfortable and all that. Then, so where are you these days? So you say you're in Travancore, and so how is the bank doing? So they start from the center point of who you are, and then gradually the circle
Build
will
up.
become bigger and bigger. So you are comfortable, and it sort of rolls on depending upon the answers in the question and all that. So it's a comfortable way of interviewing. And the other four guys who were interviewed before me, when they come out, you sort of ask, and generally this is it. So when you go in, you are also expecting this question, that. So you are in Travancore, and
Some
how is
past
the
knowledge is
bank?
already
Yes,
available to you.
yeah. So you are ready, and you can answer the question.
Mm.
I do not know why. Whether something in the moment about me or about the people who were there. The senior most person of that panel, he will ask the first question, right? So he didn't ask me all this, which I was ready to answer. He said, Mr. Bhatt, what is happening to these exchange rates and this. That time, if you remember, there was a lot of turbulence in
Yeah.
global economy around exchange rates and trade flows, and nobody would knew what would happen tomorrow. And tomes were being written all over the place, in magazines and newspapers, speeches, articles, all kinds of things. And it was a slightly difficult subject also to comprehend because it was about trade, it was about crude prices, it was about exchange rates, and it was something new that was happening in the world.
A lot of forces at play.
Lot of forces at play. So straight away he shot me that question, completely out of the blue. If I may say, sort of a difficult question at that time. But thanks to my friend, I was ready. And see again how human psychology was. I knew I was not going to be selected. So I asked him, I said, sir, do you want a long answer or do you want a short answer? This is very bold actually for a public sector interview. And he looked at me. So I said, sir, the short answer is China. The long answer is, and I gave him the
Elaborated.
whatever I thought. So the interview started off at a fairly high level. So again it was my debate, discussion days of my youth and other times. So everybody asked you whether it was about technology or whether it was about Middle East or bank. Suddenly the quality of discussions, it's a discussion or an interaction,
Got elevated.
it got elevated from the word go, and it went on for 40-45 minutes. It went on for a fairly long time. And at the end of it, the next day the rumors were that I'm front runner, if not the front runner.
Pretty fast the rumors came.
So,
two things I'm picking up from this conversation. One is, so I always say, what is this people development mystery is all about, leadership development? And it's my point of view. I consider three things very important. First is the ambition. A person has to be ambitious to be developed to the next level. Second is developmental bosses. This is very important. At times you may not have the ambition, but it's that boss who has the ability to fire you up. And that's what I saw it happening in that conversation. And third is the entire ecosystem, how it creates the opportunity. So I think hats off to that conversation that happened
absolutely
that day, and the destiny was written. The second piece which I am picking up is, like with freedom, you said that you want a short answer or a long one. So I have seen that whenever we get into the zone of expressing fully, we make the best case. But whenever we switch to impressing others, we spoil our case.
Correct.
I think that was pretty much obvious from the way. Okay, so when you took over, what are two or three big crises or challenges that you handle? And how did you go about that?
So again, crisis may be a big word, but there were challenges and a fair bit of them. So one of the challenges which I saw and which I was seeing from my days in Travancore was that the way our IT system was working was in a bit of a mess. We had got into that numbers game. How many branches have been computerized? How many customers are on computer? But the quality of computerization, the ease of use, the data that we were getting out of it, the MIS that we had, all of them was a problem. And even not only even, but especially after computerization, it was taking longer to open accounts, longer to get certain things done. In fact, certain things had become impossible to do. So either it was lack of training of the staff, or it could be simply that the way the software was configured, it was not delivering what the manual system used to do. So either it was thought unimportant, or it slipped between the cracks, or maybe it could not be done at that point of time. Maybe it was scheduled to be done later, but the customers were needing it today, right? So to my mind, our technology was in a bit of a mess. It was slowing the bank down. It was making our customer service completely inefficient, giving us a bad name. And I thought, for a bank as large as us, where this technology that I'm talking about is the core banking system of the bank, if this is the quality that is going to give us, then clearly, this needs to be handled. So what I did was, I think it was within the first week that I landed, I stopped all computerized. I completely stopped all of it. And there was a big halla because, you suddenly stop. And then that was the first time I went on video across the bank to explain to my people why I have done this. And to tell them that I want to hear from you everything that you think is wrong, every problem that you have, and every suggestion that you have on technology. It could be 1 page, it could be 1,000 pages. I want it from all of you because I want to solve this problem. It was a long conversation that I had on the video across the country. The first time I had with everyone, video conferencing. So that was one thing I did. And then I called our vendors and I told them that, this is what it is. And of course, what they said was, this is what they were asked to do. So I said, look, it can't be like that. And in fact, I remember I told them that if you go to a doctor and the doctor says that, look, something seriously wrong with you, we need to operate on your liver. And you say, I don't want my liver to take out my appendix. And if the doctor does that, will the doctor say that he asked me to take out my appendix and therefore, will the doctor be blamed or not blamed?
Yeah.
So the bank may be wanting whatever it is. You have to also advise the bank that this
What is best recommended for you?
Yeah. So the long and short of it was that I said that, we need to set it right. And we need to set a timetable for it. So we decided on 90 days. And they said, what they therefore needed from the bank, including some people who were retiring and all that. So I sort of held them back, reappointed or something. So whatever they wanted from the bank, I said, look, whatever you want, I will give you because we need to set it right. You just have to ask, you will get it, right? But whatever you have to do, if you have to get a man from the moon, you get him. 90 days, we have to set it right. To their credit, they delivered 100%. I could see they did a lot. They put in lots of people, got people from here, there, everywhere. Maybe they put certain other projects on hold or whatever it is. Their commitment was 10,000%. And from the bank side, again, whatever they wanted, I put in 1 or 2 people who are directly reporting to me, put a crack team, resources, technology, whatever.
A lot of structuring,
whatever was
changes.
required, was done. And we re-rolled it after 90 days. And so much so that our core banking site became the global reference site for the vendor. So
what I see is that big problems handle upfront. 40 years of journey, lots of challenges, big challenges, lots of learnings. So when it comes to leading people, business results, what are the 3 and 4 things that you think you did consistently to bring or come to the place where you reached?
So I think one was that from childhood itself, I had a great passion for reading. And so I was not what people say a curious child, but I used to absorb things like a sponge. If elders are talking, I would hang around listening to them. What are they saying? So sometimes they would not like it. They may be saying something which they don't want me to hear. They'll shoo me away.
Feels like prying.
Yeah, they may feel it was like prying, but for me it was, something of interest. They are saying things which I don't know and I want to hear. So whether it is reading a newspaper or reading, at that time there was a lot of comics and spy novels and, all kinds of things, including, of course, good literature that we used to get. So one is that I have always been fond of reading is the major activity, but sort of absorbing things, like a sponge. So reading a newspaper, at that time there was a lot of travel by train, always there is a book or something, So unconsciously maybe you absorb a lot of things which you don't process, don't analyze, but it is there. and maybe your subconscious, adds bits and pieces to it as you get other bits and pieces later on, and make sense of it. So I think there is a lot of sense making that goes on inside you, even without your knowledge.
Yeah.
Even without your knowledge, there is a lot of sense making that is going on, and it sort of again makes the man in some ways. So that is one thing. The other thing is that somehow I, latched on to a way of dealing with people which was, it was not confrontationalist, but it was not building consensus either. It was based on, appealing to their common sense or good sense. So, to give you an example, I mean, there are many examples on this that I can give, but if I go back to my branch, because that is my first, if I can say, tough assignment or difficult assignment, because and I thought I was completely unprepared for it. So we did say, right, that unions and the kind of atmosphere, industrial atmosphere which was there at that time. We are talking about early 80s. The higher industrial relations atmosphere in the country was slightly militant, if I can use that word, right? And we had stories of seniors or supervisors of things being heckled or even physically pushed around here and there. So one of the things that we are supposed to do at a branch level, which doesn't always happen, sometimes never happens, sometimes happen, with a very low periodicity. So you're supposed to do it every 3 months or 4 months, is known as job rotation.
Yes.
So if you have clerks who are sitting, say, in a savings bank counter, at the end of 3 months, he should go to a current account counter. Now those counters are not there. Now it is all, teller or computer. Every counter does everything. But that time, so sort of savings to current account, from current account to term deposits, or term deposits to drafts, from drafts to bills, or to foreign exchange, wherever it is. The logic of this was very simple. One is that then you get a trained
All-round
workforce
skills.
all round. Second is that if somebody falls ill or takes leave or something, you've got a substitute, right? Third is that vested interest will not develop. So chances of fraud or all those things will be lesser because, you are changing, you can't do much. And if you do much, maybe it gets discovered that, if some wrong practice, it may not necessarily be a fraud, but it may be something which puts the bank at risk because you're taking shortcuts or whatever it is. So there are a variety of reasons why job rotation is essential in a workplace like a bank branch. But the unions will always resist it. So there are some positions which are considered, easy sort of, right? You don't have to sit late. There is, or there are certain positions which are considered glamorous. Say, for example, the field officer's clerk or something like that. A lot of customers come and talk to you. So different people have different views why a certain position is where they would like to be.
Yeah.
And once they get there, they don't want to change. They don't want to move. And the unions are sort of completely supportive of this because they are their people.
They have their stakes.
And they have their stakes there, whatever it is. And they'll say, yeah, why should there be a job rotation? So I was advised by my chief inspector that, you should look at circulars, you should piche dekho, aage chalo. So, one of the things that we had to do was job rotation. So I implemented job rotation, right? Office order or whatever it is. So I implemented it in discussion, not with the staff, which is possibly what I should have done, but in discussion with my accountant and field officers, whatever it is. And sure, the union leader came and says, "Sahab, ye to nahi ho sakta." I just put that, he banged that paper on my table. He said, "Ye nahi ho sakta." So he had a lot of reasons, why it cannot be done.
And this is where the genesis of consensus versus confrontation came.
Yes. So I told him, कि नहीं ये तो होना है because this is what the bank wants and there are reasons for it.
Yeah.
So he said, in a slightly belligerent or slightly, how shall I say, arrogant way. Belligerent may not be right. So I told him, I said, then we have to talk about it because either we have to do it. If you don't want to do it, then I need to understand. And so in the evening, he and 2 or 3 other people, the president, the secretary, this, that, 3, 4 people came. And I was alone in my cabin. And we said, let's talk why it is so. And then we had a conversation which lasted 2 or 3 hours. In between, we had chai and samosas and all that, which kept on coming from outside. But so I made some changes because they gave some reasons why this cannot be done. See, once you start confronting issues, then from irrationality, sometimes irrationality remains, but a lot of things becomes rational. So they will say that, yeah, job rotation is all right, But this person, his leg has a problem. He can't climb the stairs. How can you put him somewhere, where he has to climb stairs?
You know what I'm speaking here, that when you move the conversation forward, there is a hope.
There is
an
hope, and there are a
opportunity.
lot of openings that come up. There are a
Yeah.
lot of openings that come up. So, okay, I understand that this was. So, there was a person who had a polio leg, right? So, it's difficult for him to talk. And this branch was over 4 floors. And there were no lifts. So, if you are putting him up, so obviously, definitely, you are putting him to some difficulty. So,
Yeah.
okay, he need not go up there. But can he go somewhere else on the same floor?
Yeah.
Right? So, if your problem.
Possibilities could be found.
So like that, we talked a lot, and ultimately we were able to arrive at some consensus. So I made changes to that office order. So the spirit of the office order was there in the sense that job rotation was implemented. The changes were, it was to accommodate genuine needs, or maybe sometimes it could have been an ego need. Ego need, you can also say, is a genuine need. Changes were made, but maybe they were made to what they like. And there was going to be another change 3 months down the line or 6 months down the line. So it was not important that, So I remember that when we all agreed, there was some smile and some, this thing, because they thought they had made me change. I thought I had done this. It was win-win on both sides, right? So when they were leaving the room, I asked them, make me ruko. I remember that his name was, it will come to me, Sanjay. So I said, Sanjay, 1 minute ruko. So this was a conversation in Hindi, but let me say it in English here. So I said, when you came inside my room, you came as the representative of all those people, right? He said, yes, sir, and all that. So when you're going out, you're going as my representative. So this thing has to be. He said, sir, yeah. I said, then you sit down, let's have another discussion. He said, no, sir, I understand. So I had sort of not only made an ally out of him, but, he was sort of bound by that agreement because you are now my representative when you go out.
You know, my association with you has been 3 years or so. I've known and met you. I always see few things in abundance, which is unassuming, humility, a very calm and gentle way of approaching, which is absolutely contrary to the notions of leadership, where many people believe that we need to be assertive, aggressive, then only you can deal with that. What is your message to that audience?
So I think, both the the need or the role of leadership, has evolved over time. So there was a time, if you go back to our Hori past, when there were tribals and warriors and all that, the leader was somebody who was 6.5 foot tall, who was, if you look at Maharatna Pratap, or if you look at, they were all big built people, powerful people, towering personality. Clearly, in the attributes that were important at that point of time, they were head and shoulders up. Courage, strength, competence in whether it is, hunting or whatever it is, right? This concept of leadership has persisted, so whether it is Napoleon or whether it is, political leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, there is something about the leader where he is completely different and superior to the people whom he leads. And in fact, that is part of the leadership charisma, that he's so good, so much better, so much noble or whatever it is, that he evokes a response, of empathy, of respect, of admiration, that urges people to do his bidding or to follow him, right? But I think what is now happening is, so I'm not saying that that kind of leadership is not required at all, but, as I said, circumstances make it the man. So when that kind of leadership was required, that kind of leaders were emerging. Now, I think what is happening is, if you see at the world, around more and more things that are happening in the world, which we find, epochal or path-breaking, are happening by groups of people. There's a lot of innovation that is happening, whether you take it in technology, whether you take it in biotech, right? You take it, wherever you see, some of the greatest things that are happening because people need to work in groups.
Coalitions, federations.
Lot of collaboration, right? Lot of co-creation is taking place. A lot of teamwork is there. Now there is a new concept which talks about agile teams. You have teams of 5 or 6 people, and they solve the most mind-boggling problem. Right? Now here, a leader need not necessarily be as competent or as good as his teammate. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not a great scientist or a great mathematician or a great programmer. So what is it that he has? He's the guy
who could shape things.
when these people are discussing, arguing, debating, and these people discuss, argue, and debate with a great amount of passion, great amount of, they care two hoots what is your opinion. They care about your opinion, about his own opinion, right?
Yeah.
That is what happened. Now, the job of the leader is not only to help the debate, but to keep it, in the right direction and to inject a strong dose of honesty into it. It should not become a quarrel.
Yeah.
It should remain a debate. It should not become that I have to win. It should be who is right or what is right.
Or how can we win?
Or how can, so, he creates space for these things to happen. He is a facilitator. He is a collaborator. He is a co-creator. He is a servant of that team. And by being that, he becomes the leader, because without him, those things don't happen.
Yes.
So he becomes a leader in that way, not that, he's. So I think, this kind of leader. So I'm not saying there is no need for leadership of the other kind. Maybe there is. Maybe there are places where you need a little bit of both. But increasingly, this new kind of leadership need is emerging in the world.
Yeah.
And we have to evolve in that direction, right? The difference between followers and leaders in terms of intellectual ability, in terms of the role competence that those roles require, it's diminishing in those practical terms, right? But there is something else which is required, which everybody doesn't have. And that something else is what the leader should be supplying.
And courage can be silent. The assertiveness need not be vocal. So the entire notion of attaching aggression, vocal or verbal or physical, may not work in today's context. And that's a good takeaway for me. One thing I'll definitely like to vouch is I clearly see you still at this stage being a sponge. So whenever we meet together, you're always hungry and curious, acha ye batao, which framework, what. So that's a very precious quality to possess at this stage. And to move this conversation towards the close, I have two questions more. One is, what's your unfinished agenda? You're spending time with boards, you are mentoring people. What is that unfinished agenda?
So there is no unfinished agenda as such that, I desire to do something which has not happened or which I am hoping to happen, not in that very concrete sense. But I can find myself moving, so I've enjoyed all these, roles and episodes that I've gone through. I've learned a huge amount from that, and I've become what I am today because of that. And in many ways, I find myself content with what I have become. So I know there are still, lot of gaps in my personality or in what I would be. I've still not become maybe what I should be, but in a substantial measure, I am content with what has happened to me, right? And it has happened because of experiences, episodes, people, opportunities, challenges. It's a mix of all those things. So when I look back, I'm quite happy or content with whatever happened to me in the bank or when I was the chairman of the bank or even afterwards. But what I sense now is that increasingly there is more satisfaction in me and maybe a little desire emerging that, I want to be part of those teams, who are doing good, honest, hard work, and, I want to be, to be helping them or to be part of them and to enjoy their success or to enjoy their joy, to share in their joys and all that. And if I can do that, 1% or 0.1% or whatever it is, I think somehow that is, so I don't want to be, successful and say, I did this, or people say that he did it. That is not any, I'm sort of moving out of that zone. So I'm not moved out completely. I'm still there, but I'm also moving out. So maybe I'm half there or 3/4 there or 1/4 there, but I'm moving out into a slightly different mental or emotional space where I get more joy, and it's also a different kind of. It is not that loud, raucous joy. It's more subdued, but maybe also more deep, more satisfying. So that is sort of the change. So maybe it is age.
No, I think the kind of curiosity that you have and the penchant for absorbing information and make meaning out of, I think there's a lot more value that you can pass on to the budding leaders or leaders who want to build scale in the roles of a coach or a mentor I think they have tremendous benefit to seek from and gain from. This conversation has been really very profound, meaningful, and if I can invite you to say a couple of summing up points to this audience who could be watching this conversation, mainly in terms of how do they discover the leadership, what are those two or three things would you like to say?
It's difficult because leadership is so malleable, and it's impossible to put it into a framework or to give it a definition.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. So therefore, leadership is, as I was saying earlier, either it is through circumstances or it is through choice. You cannot make somebody a leader. Either the circumstances make it, or again it is related to, so there is a problem or there is a situation and you decide to act, and the way you act, you sort of get or take the mantle of the leader, right? So if this is what is happening, how leadership emerges or how leadership becomes relevant, the message is, something which I have been saying during this conversation, is that one is how are you mindful and respectful, of the people in the situation, mindful of the situation. How do you, again to use the word which I mean, absorb the nuances that is happening there? And when you absorb them, you don't absorb them only with your brain, you actually absorb them with your being.
Being in that moment.
No, with
Completely.
your being, your
Okay,
whole
completely.
being, your heart, mind, soul, subconscious, everything. You sort of, again, it's like absorbing like a sponge.
Yeah.
How do you absorb all of it, and how do you make sense of it, and come out with the right response to that moment? The right leadership response, the right leadership stance. Now, none of these things you can do actually consciously. So you either get prepped for it over time, or it has happened and you do not know, and it just explodes during that time. So I really think that is how it happens. So there is a gradual incremental way as it happened
in
as
your
I said
journey.
in my
Yeah.
case. But even it crystallizes only at such moments when you know that it has happened or it is happening, and then you go forward from there.
I think for me, the greatest message which I am taking from this conversation is about this new notion, or new to me, is being a sponge. If as leaders, if we allow ourselves to be sponge and absorb whatever is happening around us, I think our system is designed to create the greatest insights which will help you with right choice, right expression, and right action. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. I'm really happy for you to take out this time and contribute to this wisdom of entire leadership knowledge. And I'm sure my audience will benefit from this experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope they do. Thank you.